Hi, in this video I'm going to go over what's new in the IBM Copy Services Manager 6.3.2 release. As you can see on this chart, we had a number of fixes and changes, and so we'll talk through those and go through those now. All right, the first one I want to talk about is Log4j. If you had anything to do with security, you know there's a Log4j vulnerability, that's CVE 2021-44228. It came out about December timeframe, I think. Really big deal across different organizations. Well, CSM wasn't exposed to that particular vulnerability because it ships with the version 1 of Log4j. The Log4j version 1 does have some known vulnerabilities out there, but there are known, all of those have mitigations and workarounds. So you could go and pursue those if you had to. However, with that said, because Log4j version 1 EOL a while back, 2015, IBM has taken the stance that it wants all its products to upgrade to the version 2 that has that fix or higher. So starting with the 6.3.2 release, CSM will now ship the Log4j 2.17.1 version. This does have that fix for that particular CVE 2021-44228 vulnerability. And so if you are concerned with that at all, which again, we're not exposed to that particular, but if any concerns, just want it out of the picture, upgrade to 6.3.2 and we will have the right Log4j on it. With that said, CSM does not use Log4j internally in its processing. However, we include some code from DS8000 for the easy tier heat map transfer. That is a separate set of panels on the storage system, panels that allow you to set up that easy tier heat map transfer. It does load the Log4j code and use it. And so because of that, it is part of our Java runtime, and thus the reason why we needed to upgrade to version 2. All right. Next one is our customer request for keeping the base relationships on the hardware during a removed storage system. So what this was due to a incident. A customer accidentally removed the storage system connection from CSM, the CSM server, and the design since we started was basically that when you did that, it did a full clean out. We get a little warning prompt saying it's going to remove your relationships, take care, clean everything up. With the goal being to help the customer easily clean up their entire environment. Well, now that things have changed and it's less likely for you to kind of do that in CSM, we decided, yeah, that is a little dangerous. So to prevent you from accidentally causing a full copy on yourself, we changed the code so that when you do a remove storage system, if in fact there were sessions out there still with relationships, it will react just the same as if you did a remove copy set with the keep on hardware option. So again, what the remove copy set keep on hardware option does is it will remove all the brains, all those relationships from that session, but it will keep the base relationships. So the global copy relationships, metro mirror relationships, the flash copy relationships, those base relationships from DS8000 it will keep on the actual hardware. However, we'll remove any global mirror master configurations, LSS session configurations, etc. So what this means is it will not cause you to do a full copy if this was accidentally done. However, the relationships, so because the relationships are still out there, but if it was an accident, you'll still need to import them back in and get global mirror up and running again if you want consistency group formation or any of that kind of stuff. Hopefully this helps prevent any catastrophic issues with users for causing full copies, but you should still be very careful with a remove storage system connection. All right, next one is another customer request for renaming the copy services sessions. So this request has been out there for quite a long time, quite a number of votes, but it's been very difficult for us to implement. And part of that reason is the way we implemented it. The session name was essentially our primary key in our tables, and that spanned across all the different things that related to those sessions, the internal cached objects, etc. And so trying to change the name of an active session wasn't very easy. So with 632, we do now allow you to rename them, but there are a couple of limitations. So first, the session cannot be hyperswap enabled or hardened freeze enabled. The session name is used when we pass it to the iOS component on ZOS. And so we didn't want to interfere with that. You changing the session name on the server side, but the iOS component not. So if it is hyperswap or hardened freeze enabled, you will need to disable that first, and then you can do the rename, and then you can re-enable it. The other one, there's a few session types that do not support it at all. ESC sizer session is one of those. That's really meant to be a temporary session to help you get your write IO statistics to help you size your environment. And so we didn't really support that. We don't support the renaming on that because it's constantly querying, and we didn't want to interfere with those queries. All right, the second one is safeguarded copy for Spectrum Virtualize. For that one, we actually auto-generate the sessions. We go out and discover any volume groups that have safeguarded copy policies applied to them. And if they do, we create the new session name, etc. So we didn't want you managing or changing the session name on those. XIV and Flash Copy 9000 sessions, none of those session types will support the session name change. We are doing minimal changes right now for those environments, and so we didn't include those for testing and resource reasons. And last one is the basic hyperswap session. That is the ZOS hyperswap only solution. And it's always hyperswap kind of enabled, so there was no way to really disable that, and so that's why we don't allow it for that basic hyperswap session. Another limitation is that we don't support it if it's the session is in a transitioning state. So what is a transitioning state? There is a little flag on the session. It says that it's transitioning, and those are for like when you're adding copy sets, or maybe you issued a command that has multiple steps in it that take a synchronous amount of time. And so we didn't want to interfere with that processing that occurs, and so if it's in a transitioning state, we don't allow the rename. We also don't allow the rename unless it's in a certain set of static states, so defined, prepared, suspended, protected, etc. Again, for kind of the similar reasons, we don't want the session to be in the act of waiting for something or responding to something in particular while you're doing the rename. And then last, it's pretty easy to rename. You just you go view modify and then change session name. It pops up a little dialog. You can enter this new name of the session and click OK. All right, for the next one, we have a new CLI command called lsvolcounts. What it's intended to do is exactly what our 630 health overview panel was updated to do. It shows you a bunch of the volume counts as well as the terabytes and gigabytes used for those particular roles in a given session. And those and now a customer asked us to do a CLI command so that it could be issued programmatically, as well as a REST command to issue programmatically so they can collect that data if they're necessary. Again, it keeps stuff like remote copy source volume, number of remote copy source volumes, number of flash copy sources, safeguarded copy sources, etc. So hopefully you can see the results there with the lsvolcounts. It's exactly like the GUI does, but hopefully it allows you to programmatically get that information. All right, our next one is involving the global mirror DS8000 sessions. If the Master LSS has been deleted, we will now automatically switch over and choose a new Master LSS. So a little bit of a background on this. When CSM goes and creates a global mirror session on DS8000, it will choose a Master LSS out of all the LSSs that are being managed by the session. So any copy set that has a source LSS, we'll choose one of those LSSs and make it the master. The intent of the Master LSS on the hardware is really to manage that global mirror session. And so all the commands from CSM to the hardware go to that Master LSS in terms of querying, etc. Or issuing commands to stop or start the master. And so the issue occurred that a customer had the master LSS out there. CSM automatically defines it. We do that so you don't have to worry about it. But it ended up being an LSS in the configuration where they ended up deleting all the volumes and the LSS went away automatically. So now they had a session out there that was using an LSS that wasn't even in the session. And then not only that, the LSS wasn't even there anymore, so all of the CSM commands ended up starting to fail. So we made a couple of changes in 6.3.2. The first is if a command fails to the master LSS, CSM will go and issue the command to another LSS that's on the same even or odd LSS of the cluster. So the hardware doesn't force you to use the master LSS, but it does have to be on an even LSS if the master was even, or odd LSS if the master was odd. So, but we'll handle that internally, switch over so that even though the master LSS might not be there anymore, we'll issue to it one that will allow any starts, suspends, queries, etc. Next one is our RPO history poller that runs in the background and will collect our RPO and store historically. If that fails to query 3 times, we will now put on the session an error message indicating that the RPO could not be determined. So the session will go severe, but that alerts you that the RPO that we're displaying is old and that something's wrong. In addition to that, if we get that message and this global mirror session is not sharing with the master with another session, CSM will check and say, oh, is the LSS still actually there? If the LSS is no longer being the master LSS is no longer a LSS that is part of this session, then CSM will automatically internally pause the master and restart it with a new master LSS using one of the LSSs that is currently being managed by the session. So we'll switch the master LSS automatically. So it all should look seamless, but it does require that trigger of the RPO queries failing first. We don't want to be pausing your global mirror session under you, very often. So if in particular, in this case, if the master LSS was still there, we would not end up doing this automatically. You would need to suspend, recover, and restart the session. But we do that because we don't want to, stop your consistency group formation automatically without you knowing. So you can schedule that for a time when you know that it's okay to stop the CG formation briefly, and then handle it that way. But in this case, if the master LSS is completely gone off the box, then it's important enough we think to do that switch so that you don't have any other issues going down the road. All right, this next one is a new migration solution for moving your secondary storage systems to new storage systems. So say you want to upgrade your DS8000s, but you need to easily change the source replication that's going onto those set of secondary systems quickly so that you can have replication on between the source and the new target boxes as soon as possible. So what the solution does is it's involving our migration session type. We introduced the migration session type a couple of releases back. It does not require a CSM license. So I repeat, this solution does not require you to actually purchase CSM. It comes pre-installed. CSM comes pre-installed on the DS8000 HMC, and with that, the migration session is available for you to use. So this solution will work even if your existing relationships are DSCLI based, GDPS based, or CSM based. It does not matter. This solution will help you move create the new relationships between your source and your new targets. All right, so how does it work? So in the green arrow in that picture depicts the existing relationships. What you would do is create a new migration session type that has the H1 volumes being the targets of your existing, the green line relationships, and the targets, the H2 volumes being the new volumes on the new target box. So you create that that purple squared cascader session and start GC H1H2 on it. That starts the global copies, that starts populating the new target boxes with all the data, and because it's in global copy mode, it does not affect your existing relationships. It just asynchronously does the copy. Then you can issue a validate for secondary migration command. This command is optional, but it helps. What it does is it will check to make sure that all of the H1 volumes in that purple migration session, are actually targets to another relationship. So we help you try to validate that your setup is correct. Next, after your replication for the purple session has reached about 99% to 100%, whatever, it's pretty close to synchronized, you can issue the prepare for secondary migration command. What this does is it'll redo that validate secondary migration check, make sure that they're all targets and it's cascaded. But then it will also set up a bitmap on the source volumes so that it can prepare for incremental resync, and set up the blue session, which is a new migration session where your sources are your existing sources and your targets are your new targets. So now in CSM, there's a new session, migration session depicting that. Finally, that purple session will go to a ready to migrate state, and you can issue the migrate secondary command. So that command will then do the incremental resync established from your sources to your new targets, so that the green line goes away, no more relationships there, but you have a new blue line from the sources to the new targets active on the hardware. Once that's done, you can then assimilate that into any of your existing solutions, whether it be CSM, GDPS, etc. For example, if it's global mirror session, the original one is global mirror, you would need to simulate those global copy relationships into a global mirror session so that you can get CG formation going again. So the migrate secondary command, it just puts things into a global copy state. Very simple. And so if you need Metro Mirror, Global Mirror, you'll need to import those into whatever management solution you're using. A couple more notes. You can't have Hyperswap enabled while you're doing this process. So if your existing relationships have Hyperswap enabled, you'll need to disable them, and then you can go through the process. Second, we highly recommend, even though it's not necessary, CSM will suspend those existing relationships before doing the actual migrate. But we highly recommend you do it on your own first, because that will make sure that you have a consistent image on your old target boxes. So suspend it consistently on the old targets, do the migration, and in case there's any issues, you still have a consistent copy at that old target. All right, so hopefully this new solution provides you a cleaner way to migrate to new secondary boxes with copy services, no extra CSM charge, and gets you there faster and cleaner. All right, and the last new feature I'm going to talk about in this 6.3.2 release is our ability to call an external script from a scheduled task. So I'm quite excited about this one. Basically, what we added was a new action type under our scheduled task creation wizard. You can create when you create the action, you can select run external script, and what it does is it asks you for a host name, port, user ID, and password to a server where you would want to issue a command through SSH. So CSM will use those credentials, create an SSH connection, and then under the command field, you could specify any command that can be issued through SSH. So for example, in the picture, what this is issuing it to a server and calling the stopdb.sh script. That stopdb.sh script in this case will quiesce db2. There'll be equivalent potentially start db2.sh so that can be called next, so that you could do something like create an application consistent backup. So in your scheduled task, the run external script, first one would be stop db2, then you'd take a backup, you would call command action backup session whatever for safeguard copy, and then you'll run another run external script to restart that db2 instance. So with that, you have the ability to integrate external actions and tasks within a scheduled task on its own and get different results. I should note that that command string is pretty open. You can issue pretty much anything that is allowed by that particular user, and so whatever user you specify will have to be able to issue that command. But it allows it as long as you can issue that through SSH. Also, you can specify an optional success string. So if the command would result in a certain message or a certain expected result, you can put that success string on the action, and CSM will compare it with the system.out we get from issuing the command. So we get that. If it has that message, we'll consider the action successful. If you specify something and the system.out doesn't have that, we will consider the action failed. Also, if we get anything in system error, we will consider the action failed. So be aware that if you have this staggered in your commands, it's possible that the action will fail if you get any of those conditions. All right, so what can this be used for? Well, you name it. So like I mentioned, application consistent copies now. You can integrate that with CSM. You could potentially run post-recovery tasks. So say you had a global mirror session. You want to recover that session, create a script that does a suspend recover to the remote site. You can have it then invoke an external script that does, who knows what, maybe attach host systems, maybe it IPLs a remote site, maybe it calls Ansible. If you are aware of Ansible, Ansible is a automation framework that it can be used to automate a lot of stuff, not just Red Hat, but there's even a large ZOS mainframe Ansible collection out there. It's supported so that you can go out there and call an Ansible playbook to run a series of tasks and integrate that with that CSM scheduled task. So, batch jobs, log collecting. I was talking to a customer just the other day about disabling ports after waiting for the percent to complete. So they migrate something, wait for the percent to complete, they suspend, terminate, and then they want to disable the ports to prevent anything from running for sure. So all that can be done now within that scheduled task. So hopefully you find this very powerful. Hopefully you find this very useful. And it just goes to show you how much more we're integrating into our scheduled tasks. All right, and the last thing I want to talk about is the new idea portal. So if you've opened CSM RFEs before, that site will now redirect you to this IBM System Storage Ideas portal. IBM is trying to move to a more common AHA-based solution for opening ideas. So you may see this across all your IBM portfolio, at least sometime soon here in the near future. Well, CSM has already moved to it. You can go to that new idea portal, see any of your existing RFEs. They've all been converted over to the AHA ideas. And so you can see those, see the votes, vote for them, add new ones, etc. Hopefully you've looked at CSM in the past and know we look very closely at our RFEs and our requests from our customers. We look at the votes very closely and use those to help us provide our priorities. So hope you enjoy the new portal. Hopefully it works for you, but I just want to make you aware that there's a new place for opening requests. Right, with that, I want to say thank you. Hope this was a good presentation. Hope you like our new 6.3.2 features. And we look forward to enhancing it in 6.3.3 or the next release with any of your requests. Thank you very much.